Hawaii, this magical but seems distant, foreign, far-off land that a lot of people actually forget is part of the United States, probably because it's actually located in Polynesia and about 3,000 miles off of the continental US. I'm talking like a 6-hour flight from the tip of California. Like, it's crazy. Not only that, Hawaii is actually a pretty rural state. However, Oahu, the most populated of the Hawaiian Islands, in Honolulu alone, has about 1 million people, which is pretty intense. I flew to Hawaii all the way from New York City to celebrate my 30th birthday. The big 30. Oh my god, I can't believe it's here. I actually spent my birthday on Big Island, but that's gonna be a completely different video. But if you're going to Oahu for the first time, this is what I did and what I would recommend for your first time visiting Hawaii. If you want great weather and lower crowds, the best times to visit are typically going to be in the off season. Peak times to visit are going to be November to February, and then June to August. During these times, you can expect higher crowds and bigger fees. However, don't let visiting during peak time necessarily throw you off. I did go during February, which is peak time, and I still had a great time. A car. You need a car. So Oahu does have like above ground train system. It has been dubbed the fail rail. It goes about as quickly as a vehicle and it doesn't really get you to a ton of places. I would recommend just renting a car from the airport or from a local car place. It's really going to be the best thing to be able to get around if you actually want freedom to be able to do beautiful things like, was it like the H3 highway drive and going to just all of the different places around. You're gonna need a car. Public transport is just unfortunately not gonna cut it. Uber, Lyft, all of those things are going to be way too expensive. So I would just work a rental car into your budget to really be able to experience what Oahu has to offer. I'm hoping this is obvious, and as I kind of said in the intro, the Hawaiian Islands are islands. You're going to need to absolutely take an airplane to get to the island of Oahu, or any of the Hawaiian Islands for that fact. Hawaii is pretty isolated. It's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Oahu does actually have more than one airport. However, I would recommend flying into the Daniel D. Inouye International Airport. It's honestly right next to Honolulu. I left the airport and I was in downtown Honolulu in about 10 to 15 minutes. Not Waikiki. I was actually very fortunate that I have family who was living there at the time that I was visiting. So I was actually able to stay in Mililani. So I got to see more of the residential side of the island, which was really nice. However, I know not everyone is going to be so fortunate. I just want to kind of highlight that I did spend some time in Waikiki while I was there. I know it is a major hub for tourists to go to resorts and things like that. I thought it was awful. It's very commercialized, very busy. It kind of gave me Vegas Strip, but in Hawaii, or Fifth Avenue kind of vibes. I heard that Waikiki was actually built before a lot of zoning laws went into place, which is kind of how it's allowed to exist. And I just don't recommend it. It felt very much like its own ecosystem, kind of like to trap you there. I think that's a real shame because it is very walkable. And as I said, I do think you're going to need a car to experience a lot of what Oahu has to offer. And if you get stuck in Waikiki, you're not really going to be experiencing Oahu. You're going to need to rely on tour buses to be able to go places, and that's going to, I think, increase your costs, and I think it's just going to cause an overall not as great of an experience that you could have if you were to stay outside of that major tourist area. But it's your vacation, so do as you will. Not too far from the airport is actually this thing called a swap meet. There's a small entry fee if you're a non-resident or like a tourist. It's about $3 to get in. You're able to park and there's just a ton of different vendors. What I really love about this is it's just like a cool way to support local vendors. They've got souvenirs, drinks, and food. It was just a really cool place to find clothes and things like that. I wouldn't have known it even existed if I didn't know someone who lived on the island. So I just think it's a really cool thing to go and check out. Continuing on shopping, I actually would also recommend the Ala Moana Center. I know it's kind of funny to be recommending a mall, but it is actually, I think, one of the coolest outdoor malls that I've ever been to in my life, and that's just because they've really integrated nature into the mall really well. Pretty much everything is outside, and there's also a lot of like local Hawaiian shops, so they have things that are just very unique. Also, the Ala Moana Center is where I had my first spam musubi in the food court, and I thought the food court was a lot of fun because it had just a lot of different interesting and fun things. So if you aren't aware, Hawaii, before it was taken by the US, to put it as simply as possible, was actually a kingdom. So they had a royal family, everything. Iolani Palace on Oahu is the only royal residence in the United States, which is honestly very, very cool. I took an audio guide tour. They do, I found out, also offer like guided tours. You do have to cover your shoes before you go in. They give you these little like booties to put on top of them. This is to protect the floors because the palace is just, it's fragile, especially with the materials that it's built out of. If you do have a backpack, you also do have to leave it outside with employees, or you can turn it around and put it on your front. This is actually what I did. This is to make sure that when you're turning and looking at things, you don't accidentally like knock something over, because that would be absolutely terrible. You don't want to damage anything inside the palace. When the tour is done, you are able to go downstairs into the basement. There's just more stuff down there to see, so don't leave immediately once you're done. This palace is a huge part of Hawaiian culture and their heritage, so it's also just a beautiful building. All in that, I would say, is a good reason to just go see it. The Royal Hawaiian Band also sometimes has concerts outside. If you're able to time your visit around that could be really cool. I happened to do it by accident. I believe I visited on a Friday, but maybe you can look up the schedule to see if you could see one of the concerts before going and doing your tour in the palace. Kamehameha, or as I also heard it pronounced at one point, Kameyamaha. I'm not entirely sure which one's correct, but I was told everyone says Kamehameha. He was the king of Hawaii who actually was able to unify all of the Hawaiian Islands under one nation. And the statue is actually right across the street from Iolani Palace, so you can just go ahead and take a look at it. It's pretty impressive and pretty cool looking statue. This museum is also known as the State of Hawaii Museum of Natural and Cultural History. The museum was founded by Charles Reed Bishop in honor of his late wife, Princess Bernice Pauahi Bishop, who was the last descendant of the royal Kamehameha line. This man dedicated an entire museum to his wife, so gentlemen, my standards have been raised. The first floor was actually my favorite because it focused on Hawaiian culture and folklore, so there were just like a lot of really cool old like Hawaiian buildings and statues that focused on history and things like that. Personally, I love folklore. I think folklore in cultures is one of the most interesting things we have. Yeah, and some of it was also really kind of creepy, but because there's this one statue that apparently the man who found it said that the statue called out to him or something like that, which is just terrifying if you think about it. But otherwise, everything was really beautiful. The Bishop Museum also has the world's largest natural history specimen collection, which is just like honestly very impressive. I would not have expected Hawaii to have that. I also watched a planetarium show. I watched the one on wayfinding, which is the ancient way of navigating using the stars. This practice was actually almost completely lost. It was an amazing story on how they were able to actually rediscover this skill and bring it back from basically the brink of extinction. I highly recommend you go and watch that as well. I think it only costs an extra $6 to tack that on to my ticket. Half of the show is a movie and the second half is interactive and takes about 45 minutes, but don't be late because then you can't get in. Have you ever wanted to visit a Japanese temple without actually going to Japan? Yes, I realize how that question sounds, but if so, you are in luck because they have a full Japanese temple in Hawaii. The Byodo-in Temple is actually a recreation of a 1,000-year-old temple in Japan of the same name. They do perform memorial services and even, I guess, have an ash garden according to their website. There is a small admission fee of about $7, which I thought was relatively reasonable. If you want to enter the temple, you do have to remove your shoes. This is just out of respect. There is also a large Buddha statue, and then you are also able to light incense if you so choose. Outside of the temple itself, there are a bunch of ponds, and then there's also a bell that you can ring, which I also thought was a bunch of fun. I don't even want to get into the history of dole in Hawaii because yes, I know it is sad and I know it is dark. But however, I did think that overall the dole plantation was just kind of like meh. My biggest concern was just getting Dole Whip. I love Dole Whip. I did go and get that. I got the one which was covered in fresh pineapple and it was just delicious. Going to the plantation itself doesn't actually cost any money. If you want to just walk around, take pictures and whatnot, that is a free activity. The plantation itself is mostly just a giant store. A lot of it doesn't make sense. There's like one thing where you can like fish for pearls and I don't understand why that's a thing. What does that have to do with pineapples? Otherwise, if you want to do things like the maze, which I think they said it was like the largest maze in the world, which that was kind of cool. There's also a train ride. These do have fees. And then after I left, I found out there is actually a pineapple like factory tour. Unfortunately, I did not get to do that, but that one is the one thing that I may have actually paid to do. Overall, this place is 1,000% a tourist trap. If you want Dole Whip, go and get it. Otherwise, I'm going to say this place is probably something you could easily pass on. This spot is Oahu's very first visitor coffee farm. What's actually really cool is Hawaii is the only place in the United States where they can actually grow coffee. You may think of, when you say Hawaii, you think of Kona coffee, which yes, they do grow that over in Kona. However, they can also grow coffee on the other islands. So at the Green World Coffee Farm, it is 100% Hawaiian grown coffee, which is really, really cool. At Green World, they do have a retail store with an espresso bar and farm tours, which are completely free with no reservation required. I do recommend you stop in at their espresso bar to get a coffee and maybe even a pastry. I got their iced macadamia nut latte, which I loved. I also got their lilikoi bar, which lilikoi is the Hawaiian word for passion fruit. As I said, the coffee I thought was great. The lilikoi bar I thought was fine. It was just kind of sweet. I didn't really taste any passion fruit. Once you grab your treats, I thought mine actually came out pretty quickly. I walked around the retail store. You can get things like fresh coffee beans. You can have it even ground there. There's also cups, mugs, magnets, all kinds of little goodies. They do also have some fresh items that are specifically labeled that they can't be taken outside of Hawaii. So make sure that you're just paying attention if you do want to get anything like that, because there is a very strict rules on agriculture and the things that can and cannot leave the state. Definitely go outside and see their coffee farm in the little garden. I had my coffee and my pastry in the garden. And what's really nice is that there's actually chickens. Actually, I think it was a mix of chickens and roosters, and they're going to sing you the song of their people. But fortunately, none of them tried to steal any of my food. Up near North Shore is Halavea. It's this really cute little historic Hawaiian town. I basically just went to their little shopping district and walked around. Here I picked up a couple of souvenirs, such as a passion fruit coconut pancake syrup, and now one of my new favorite pairs of earrings. Also a fun fact, the McDonald's in this area has a very Hawaiian exterior. I think it would be cool just to stop by and see it. Also, as you know, McDonald's around the world does tend to have fun, unique, different things you can try. So the one in Hawaii actually does have a taro pie. I did try to go in and get it, and sadly it was sold out. Maybe you'll have better luck than I did. One of the US's sadder days in history is going to be Pearl Harbor, but what's really interesting is Pearl Harbor is still actually an active military base. It's also one of the very few bases that civilians are allowed to have regular access to because of the Pearl Harbor memorials and the different museums that are on its location. If you are going to be driving to base yourself, just be careful because you want to make sure that you are taking the correct exit off the freeway. You want to make sure you're looking for the Arizona Memorial Place exit, not the Hickam Air Force Base Pearl Harbor exit, because then that's going to be the active part of the base and you're going to need an active ID to go through there, and if you don't have one, they're going to turn you away. I was with someone who had an active military ID, so this is the exit that we went into, and I was mostly just given a drive-by tour on base, so I just saw things from the car. We did stop at a PX at one point, but otherwise I did not go into the memorial, I did not go into the museum. I just had things pointed out to me, and it was also really cool to see a lot of the old aircrafts that were on base. But I would highly recommend that you do go and see the museums and the memorials. It was just not something that we really had time for that day because Hawaiian Airlines left my suitcase on the mainland, and so we had to kind of shift our plans around so that we could quickly make it back to the airport when it was delivered. So RIP to seeing the memorial, but otherwise it was a very cool thing to see and sort of just surreal to actually be there in general. This is an all-day activity, so please listen to me when I tell you, you need pretty much the entire day for this place. Unless you're planning on doing a multi-day visit, which I don't really think is necessary, I would get there as soon as they open at noon. If you want to learn more about Polynesian culture, I really do think that the Polynesian Cultural Center is a must-do while you're visiting Oahu. It is run by Brigham Young University, and most of the performers there are students attending the university, and they're earning credit towards paying down their tuition. So I will warn you, there are some sections of it which are kind of geared a little bit towards Mormonism. However, you can also very easily avoid that if it's something that's going to bother you. Otherwise, make sure you get there at noon because that way you can check in, and at 12:30, there's actually a show on the river, or at least like the water canal thing that like runs through the center. It's a whole performance. They have boats for each of the different cultures that are represented at the center, and it only happens once, and it was something that that I thought was just very cool overall. It's a great way, I think, to honestly start the day. As you work your way through the villages, they do have Tahiti, Tonga, Aotearoa, also known as New Zealand, or was it the land of the Great White Cloud? But they do use the traditional Polynesian name. Samoa, Easter Island, and of course, Hawaii. Many of the programs that each of the little villages have do repeat. However, there's no way you're going to make it to all of them. So I would take a look at the program schedule and see which ones that interest you the most, that you can prioritize those. Because the show goes on until probably about 1 o'clock, and then the villages start to shut down around 5, you're really only going to have about 4 hours to get through all of the villages. And to not feel rushed, you're going to want about 30 to 45 minutes at each one. So just make sure you plan your time accordingly. I honestly really enjoyed learning about all of the different Polynesian cultures. One of the biggest things that I thought was fascinating is that fire dancing, which is commonly associated with Hawaiian luau's, is not Hawaiian at all. It's actually Samoan. I also got to see a haka performance in the Aotearoa village. I got to try poi, which is like a mashed taro, in the Hawaii village. I saw a performance of a plate being weaved out of leaves for Samoa. I also got to see a traditional wedding ceremony for Tahiti, which I thought was really beautiful. They included a bunch of people who were already married to kind of like join in to, quote, renew their vows, which I thought was super cute. There's also a cultural values presentation in Tonga, which brought down some people to participate, and I just really like that a lot of the performances kind of involve the people who are actually watching them. Easter Island is technically part of this. It does have a small section in sort of the middle of the villages. There aren't any presentations or anything like that, but you can just see a couple of small things. Unless you are trying to spend multiple days here, which, as I said, I don't really think is necessary, they do offer a luau here, and I would skip it because you're not going to have time to do the villages otherwise. Instead, when it comes to food, I would actually recommend doing the Gateway Buffet. So this is the package that I purchased. At the buffet, they do have a ton of different foods you can try, such as huli huli chicken, chashu pork, grilled pineapple, various kinds of poke, and they even have fresh tuna sashimi, which they are cutting straight off the fish. Now, I tell you, I did multiple plates. I think I did 4, so I broke mine up into like cooked meats, poke, and then I just kind of did like a mishmash of things after that. But I did that and dessert, and it was lovely. Highly recommend. If you don't want to do the buffet, they do have various food trucks and a couple of other options, but I thought the Gateway Buffet was a lot of fun. Plus, they do have performances going on. There was a guy playing guitar, or was it a ukulele? Probably a ukulele. I just really enjoyed that little aspect of the whole experience. Plus, they called out birthdays. My sister embarrassed me, but it was fine. The big thing at the end of the day that I think you just really should not miss is the Ha Breath of Life show. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but think of it as like a full-on Broadway performance, but it's outside. But go see it. It's very, very cool. This is a very long, full day. You are probably going to go back to your accommodation just completely dead. But I think it's worth it. Yes, you should attend a luau. It's a very fun thing to do. I would personally do this at the end of your trip. I did mine on my last night before I left to go home the next day. I went to Jermaine's luau, and now that I'm actually recording this months after I did the trip, you may recognize as the work location that Nani got fired from in the new live action Lilo and Stitch movie. So that was just really cool to watch the film, and I was like, oh my god, I've been there! They renamed it for the film. It was just really cool to be like, I was there. That's so cool. When you get there, you are given a lei. There's not this one my sister gave me. That is included in the cost of the event. They'll also offer to take your photo. The photo itself, like the photography aspect of it, is free. They will try to sell you the picture at the end of the event. Do not feel pressured to buy it. Honestly, I didn't even like ours. I really enjoyed this entire experience. They do a presentation of pulling the kalua pork, which is the traditional steamed Hawaiian pork, out of the ground. And they did tell us that their luau is one of the few ones that still actually cooks the pig in this way. I guess a lot of them have stopped doing the in the ground method. So that was pretty cool to see, and I think that the guys who were doing everything just made it a really entertaining experience. During the performances, they actually had a lot of ones that represented different types of Polynesian culture. It wasn't just Hawaiian, and we did get to see more of that Samoan fire dancing. They did do birthday shout outs for those who were celebrating, like myself.
Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday dear Emma, happy birthday to you.
So I did stand up and I thought that was a lot of fun. They did also teach us some Tahitian dancing. And did I go on stage for this? Yes, I absolutely did. Because why the F not? I had a really good time and I want to give the girls who were doing these dances a lot of credit because these hip movements were actually very hard. So mad props to them. I also did enjoy the food on the buffet overall. I got to try a couple more Hawaiian items that I hadn't had yet, such as lomi lomi salmon and talpia. I did try poi again, and honestly, I just think it's something that I can't get into. Apparently, it's kind of like a either you love it or you hate it sort of thing, sort of like natto. And for the record, I love natto, but poi, I don't know. I think it's not my thing. Oh man, I kicked my tripod. There were also a couple of like mainland American items on there, and personally, I would skip them. The one thing that I remember grabbing was the cake, and it was just kind of like, it wasn't good. Eat the halpia for dessert instead. Just a few extra things. Go to a Hawaiian grocery store. Oh my god. So you know how in like mainland grocery stores, there's like, and they have these in Hawaii too, but the dairy section and the bakery section and the, you know, the butcher, the meat section, they have a poke section. So you can actually go up and have different kinds of poke and you can have it weighed out. You can also have poke bowls made, which is a really cheap way to also have it. I had one at one of the grocery stores that I went to and it was like $7 and it was freaking delicious and it was a ton of food. It's also a good spot to get non-perishable food that you might want to take back, such as Hawaiian pancake mix, or you can even pick up a nice snack like butter mochi. I love butter mochi. That stuff is so good. You should also visit a Hawaiian 7-Eleven, which, why am I telling you to go to a convenience store? Because have you been to 7-Eleven in Asia? They're amazing. It's not quite as good as the ones in Asia, but it's significantly better than the ones on the mainland. They have grab and go options such as like dynamite tuna rolls and pho, saimin, manapua, bento boxes. Like mainland 7-Eleven. Dear God, step up your game. Like, oh, I cannot. So yes, go to Hawaii 7-Eleven. I loved it. It was great. I actually did a whole Hawaii 7-Eleven taste testing short. I will go ahead and link that whichever side is the appropriate one. Wear sunscreen. Oh my god. The Hawaiian sun doesn't play. I do not care how much melanin you have in your skin. I don't care if you're from sub-Saharan Africa. Put sunscreen on because you don't want to damage your skin and you will just have such a better trip if you protect your skin. Also, just have a good time. Hawaii is still kind of dealing with some issues with over-tourism, and then they had the problems in Maui with the fires. Just go, have a good time, be respectful, try the local food, and I think you're just gonna have an amazing trip. I do hope that you found this helpful. It was my first time to Hawaii and I had an amazing time. It was a great way to say goodbye to my 20s. Please do not forget to check out my full blog post on Oahu. I will link it in the description below. Please comment, like, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Mahalo!